to A Well-Designed Business. My name is LuAnn Nigara, and I'm so glad you found this podcast. Together with my husband Vince and our partner Bill, we have grown our company Window Works from the ground up. So I know and I understand the challenges you face in running your interior design business. I also know that your talent alone isn't enough to ensure your success. So on this podcast, we talk about strategies and practical steps to help you grow your business. But make no mistake about it, we have our share of fun here too, mixed in with those aha moments that I love so much. This isn't fluff. Nobody has time for that. Whether you are a new interior designer or a seasoned designer, I am here to help you create and to manage the kind of interior design firm that you dream of. It's straight talk and it's action. Are you ready? Let's get started. Hi, welcome to A Well-Designed Business. It's Power Talk Friday. Jude Charles is back on the show with me today. He was with us episode 516. And if you remember, his genius and his business is digging deep into the lives of his clients to find those compelling stories that no one else knows, and then helping his clients leverage those stories to scale their business. Jude is a story-driven filmmaker, brand strategist, and speaker. And today for the show, we're doing something a little different. Today, Jude puts me in the hot seat, just like he does with his clients. He goes through his process to get at what makes LuAnn LuAnn, and why would somebody want to do business with her. So it was a fun thing. He did not prep me for it. I experienced it just the way you might experience if you were lucky enough to work with Jude. So I'm looking forward to sharing this episode with you. It was fun for me, and I had some aha moments. I think you're going to like it. And before we start, I just want to remind you, if you are listening in real time, we are in early bird registration for LuAnn Live right now. And when you think about storytelling the way Jude does, I'm thinking, have I created the story for you about what you can expect with LuAnn Live? So I'm going to take a moment to just tell you that probably one of the most critical parts of LuAnn Live, beyond the content, okay, that's number one, foremost, that I know that every single discussion, 9 panel discussions, are going to bring on the ideas, the tools, the strategies for you to up-level your business. That is a without question. But beyond that, the single most important element for me is the interaction. It is that this is going to be an interactive event. This is not a passive event where you are on Zoom and you are only watching me and whoever else is on the screen. You are going to be on the screen too. I'm going to have 4 big screen TVs set up on the stage that I will be on so that I can see you. You can raise your hand. You can say, I have a question for the panelists. I have a question for you. I'm going to look at your faces just like I did at LuAnn Live, and I'm going to call on you. And I'm going to say, hey, Lori Carpenter, how are you? What's your question? Right? Hey, Melissa, how are you? Hi, Melissa Schmidt. Hi, Melissa Lindsay. Hi, all the Melissas that I know. How are you? What is your question? Okay? This is how this is going to work. So I have to tell you that I loved the experience, the magic at LuAnn Live as much as you did. And as much as COVID had different ideas and different plans for us, I'm still pushing my way through to create that element of it that was so important and so enjoyable to all of us. So you are going to be able to interact with me. This is not passive. We've just had the book launch, right? The book launch, 200 or 300 people joined us. We didn't see your faces. You only saw our faces. This is not that. This is you are there. If you raise your hand to ask a question, the camera is going to go to you. We're all going to see you, okay? We're going to have lots of fun, lots of laughs, lots of ideas, lots of learning, all right? And so I hope that little story about how LuAnn Live will be has enticed you to understand that I truly am intending to make it every bit as good as you remember it being. All right? Okay, I'm looking forward to sharing this with you. It was pretty fun, as I said. So here's Jude Charles. Hi, Jude. Thanks so much for coming back to A Well-Designed Business today.
Thank you for having me, LuAnn. It is very exciting to be back to go deeper into the conversation that we started not too long ago.
I know. You were on the show, episode 516, and I say it all the time. Sometimes people will say to me, how do you decide who comes back to the show? And I say it starts with chemistry, right? It starts with a rapport. And I just, for me, and I imagine for you, since we're doing this again, I just instantly loved you. It's just like loved your energy and loved your message. And of course, I've learned since we've talked a little bit in between the episode and now that a lot of my designers felt the same way, and they've been reaching out to you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's been quite amazing to get the reception from the designers that's been listening to the show. They're very open to the idea of now bringing their story to life. And it's been exciting to have those conversations and to allow people to dig deeper into their own story.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. So you said to me, we can do exactly that. We can go deeper. And you said the first phase is what you call dramatic clarity. And when we talked a little bit about it, you said, look, the best way for me to show this and teach this and, explain it in a way that the designers and the window treatment professionals and the architects listening can understand it is if we could do like a live sort of case study coaching session. And I was like, who would that be with? And so you didn't give me the questions. You didn't tell me how it's going to go. I'm just putting myself here in your hands and letting you take the wheel. So my guess is, Jude, that this is sort of the way you would work with a client, right? If I called you up and I said, hey, love what you're doing. How do I focus and figure out what my stories are and how do I get clear in them? Is that really how this would normally go?
Yeah, so the first step would be going through what I call a road mapping strategy session. And in road mapping, that's what we're talking about now, the first phase, which is dramatic clarity. I want to dig deep into more about who you are as an entrepreneur, as a leader, as the person running the business. I want to dig deeper into who you are, not just about the thing that you can do. And that's why I call it dramatic clarity, because you got to really dig deep into your brand and get really clear about what you stand for, what you don't stand for, why you do the work that you do. And that's why we call it dramatic clarity, because I want to get a three-dimensional view into your world, again, that goes beyond just the business that you run. And so, yes, that's what I want to do with you today is dive deeper into a case study and understanding what makes LuAnn LuAnn, right? And over time, you'll see how this all connects together, because I know here on the podcast, you spend a lot of time sharing your own story. So we may craft a story that is not new, but as we go along, as we dive deeper into the story, your audience will get to see, okay, this is why, even if I've shared this story 1,000 times, this is why it's important to not just share the story, but then bring it to life so that other people can experience it.
Okay. Well, and you're right, because having, being in the unique position of being a podcaster, of course, I am telling my story often in little snippets here and there, and it's 600 episodes. You and I talked, and I said I'm just a little concerned that they're like, okay, we know this story, like, right? But to your point is just the process, to hear the process, and who knows, you may uncover something about my stories that I had not considered. I know that recently Deb, design writer Deb and Betty Martin both interviewed me. They interviewed me together for my 600th episode. And I actually did end up sharing a couple of stories that I had never shared before. And so I think what you do is incredibly valuable, because it does take someone with that probing and that experience of how to ask a question and what kind of information to dig for, so that we do have that chance to reflect. And then the added hurdle that my entire audience has, and I know that's how you're going to help us as well, is they don't have a podcast necessarily to just go, oh, well, there's a great story, let me start telling everybody. Then they have to translate it to actually expressing it to their potential consumers through their social media and their website and
right,
so
absolutely.
forth, right?
And that's exactly what I want to show. It's not just, okay, how do I share it on a podcast? Even if you don't have one, well, how do you take the story that you craft and share it on your website? How do you share it in an email sequence before someone ever meets you? How do you share it in a presentation? If you're presenting live on a Zoom call, if you're presenting live in person, how do you craft this story in a way that makes people understand who you are, what you stand for, why you stand for it? Again, all these things that we'll talk about throughout this episode. But again, that's the importance of it, is how do you take this story and use it over and over and over again?
Okay. So you're in the driver's seat. What do we do now?
So let's start with, I want to better understand, I want to start with your philosophies and beliefs. I want to start with understanding what this podcast means to you. Why did you start this podcast? And you're on episode number 600. What does it mean to get to episode number 600?
There's two sides of the answer. The one side of the answer is the practical side, which is I had a desire to create a revenue stream that did not involve me driving my car, knocking on your door, and using my tape measure and selling you a window treatment. That's the very practical side of it. And then the mission side of it, the side of it that is the passion side of it, is truly from a lifetime experience working side by side with interior designers and recognizing that as creative and talented as you are, that is not the factor that will determine whether your firm is successful or not. The factor that determines whether your firm is successful or not is your business acumen. And it's the firms that have both that really catapult. And whether catapult means being a big fish in a little town of 2,000 people, if that's your desire, or catapult means being the Amber Lewises and the Shay McGees of the world. It's just that you achieve your dreams as a business owner when you know how to do business. And as creatives, often we mistakenly think we need to lean into our creativity and be the most unique creative wise. And that needs, you cannot be uber super successful if you don't have the creative side. But when you only have that, it's not going to happen.
Tell me about a moment when you realized the show was having an effect on your audience. Meaning, you just told me like it's about going deeper with your designers and them understanding how to build the business. But when did you realize like this was really effective for them?
Oh my goodness! From almost the beginning, you know, I want to say one of the first recollections is Mary Fran Broussard. I don't think the show was on a month, and I remember I did not know her before that. Of course, I know her now. Her name sticks in my mind because within, I think, a month, she sent an email and she just said, "My goodness, like this is helping me." I've only heard, you know, what did I have, 3-4 episodes, and she just complimented it, and she said that she was already understanding. And what's interesting is I remember being at my desk at WindowWorks and that email coming in. And Kim saw it first. It's just like, Lou, look at the email. I was like, what? And we just looked at each other. We're like, whoa. And then I know that this was within the first month because then I was driving to D.C. to visit my daughter. I know it was March. The show aired in February. And Devetta Moore sent me an email too. And she just said, you know, the same thing, just describing the lesson in whatever the podcast episode was that turned a light bulb on for her. And so I was just like, oh, we're on to something here.
How did that make you feel, like to be onto something, to know that people like Mary Fran was listening to you? I think you said it was episode 3 or 4. Like it wasn't even that far along.
I know.
Right? And this was only a spark. This was only an
insane.
idea like, hey, I should put out more information. I've been doing this for a very long time. I have this successful business. I should put out information to help other designers. How did it feel to know this is effective? Like people are not only listening to it, they're understanding it, but they're getting ready to take action. How did that make you feel at the time?
It was like jumping up and down and, you know, it was insanity. I remember me and Kim were in the office when Mary Franz came in, and we were just looking at each other. We were like, Kim's like, Vin, come look at this email. And I was driving in the car when Davetta's message came to me. And I'm like, you're not going to believe it. Listen to it. It was thrilling. It was thrilling to know that I think any one of us, when we work hard to do something, or at that point, I can't even say I worked hard, not in contrast to how hard I would go on to work, right? But I had spent mental energy at that point for 7-8 months with this idea and with this concept, and to have it proven, or at least the glimmer of the proof so quick, was so exhilarating.
Wow, that's amazing. I wonder, okay, so you've been in business. At that point, how long had you been in business?
35 years, 34, 35.
And now you step out to do this podcast. And you mentioned that, of course, the desire was to create more revenue that didn't involve you. But now you're seeing people respond. Like, is there a part of you that made you realize, the 35 years I've spent in business, this is what it was for? Like, it wasn't just about the money. It was about helping people get to their next level. Is there a point where that you realize that?
100%. And I would say that awareness came over the next 6 to 7 months. Because to your point, as I got more comfortable interviewing and found my little groove there, I realized that I needed that 35 years in business to be the person that the iTunes reviews were saying. And the iTunes reviews were coming in and saying, how do you ask the question in my head? I'm listening and I'm saying, ask this, and then you do. And I realized is that if I had done this 5 years into business, I would have had the same crazy pants energy. I still would have been as insatiably curious. I still would have been all of that. But the interview questions and the conversation itself would have been at a much more shallow level, maybe entertaining, but I don't think it would. I know it wouldn't have reached the depths that it reaches. And because that is me either placing myself in the seat of the entrepreneur I'm speaking to and saying, yep, I remember that feeling at the 5-year mark, at the 10-year mark, or that aha at 20 years. And so then when I form my questions, sometimes I ask the question I already know the answer to because I've experienced it, right? But I don't say, I know that. Like, let me just, so you can say. So I kind of, with my experiences, I know what sometimes a part of what they're thinking and trying to express, so it helps me inform how to pull it out of them. And then the other, that's 50% of the time, and the other 50% of the time, I'm learning it just like they are. I'm like, whoa, I didn't know that. How did I be in business 35 years and not know that? And tell me more about that. And the questions I'm asking are no different than somebody sitting in the audience that doesn't know the answer either, right? So I know I've said it 1,000 times to my personal circle that I love doing this, but it's what I say to younger designers that I coach and my own daughter and others that I coach. And when they're striving and hungry for making that thing, like, what is my purpose? What is my thing? Can't I just identify it? And I say to them sometimes you're creating the life experiences so you're ready to do and be the thing. Just give it a minute. Like, go and do your best every day to whatever it is you're doing, and trust that the universe is gathering the experiences you need in order to go and be the person you envision to be, the business person or the career person you envision to be.
And so what I hear you saying is that you because of this process, because of starting the podcast, you discovered your purpose. Was purpose important to you at that point in your career?
Yes, because it's a funny thing, because I've always thought that I was supposed to do something different just different. Like when, one of the stories I've always told is how when I was 13, I was 100% sure I was supposed to be president of the United States. Like that was my thing. This is who I'm supposed to be. So just let's put out the red carpet and put the roadmap there. Right. But, looking back, I didn't have not one thing other than desire that could even remotely make that happen. I didn't have money, connections, education, none of it. Right. But the thing about it is that there was always this feeling that something, and I wrote about it in my first book, that at 10 years into WindowWorks, I just was like, okay, stop with this. I'm not a blind salesperson. I was supposed to do something amazing. And that sounds crazy to say, but I know a lot of us feel that way. And I hope everybody feels that way, is the truth, whether we're inclined to say it out loud or not. I do believe we're all supposed to do something amazing. And I really felt like at the 10-year mark in WindowWorks that I had given up being amazing for making money and for providing and for just doing what was in front of me. And I had this huge midlife business crisis at like 32 years old. And there was a moment, and I've told the story often, where one time a customer, I won't go through the whole thing, but one time a customer literally, truly in words expressed appreciation for not only me and having done her window treatments, through the 10 years, but for our company and the way we do the window treatments, the way that we interact and we provide the client experience. And that was a turning point for me. I was like, oh, you don't just own a blind company. You're providing a service to this community, and they rely on you and they depend on you. And you know what? It's okay that your amazing thing is that you are building an amazing business with Vin and Bill. And so that got me through another 25 years. and I hadn't left that appreciation, but it just became a practical. I was in my mid-50s and Vinny was in his late 60s. It was like, are we really going to knock on doors until we're in our 80s? Like, this is not sustainable. It just was a non-sustainable business model, that we have a company that at that point probably supported 6 or 8 employees, and that him and I were the only income drivers, the only rainmakers. It was logically not sustainable. And so that created I had long ago, I was about to say long ago given up, but that's not right. I had long ago realized that it was amazing to create such an incredible business. So I wasn't now searching for that. What's that LuAnn thing that's amazing? That search was gone. And then all of a sudden, here it is. I'm like, my Aunt Honey, my mother, my husband, anybody who knows me, they are like, you are doing exactly what you were born to do. And it's crazy because that's exactly how it feels.
Why is it that they feel like now you're doing what it is that you were born to do? What is it that you're an energetic person, you're lively, but what is it that makes this podcast the thing that you were called to do?
I think because in our circle with the moms, when the kids were little, and you have your mom circle of group, friends, and you meet on the blacktop when you pick up your kids after school, and in our circle of friends, my family circle, I've always often been the one called when there's a personal relationship type problem, or a personal growth type problem, or I can't get out of my own head type problem. I have always had a great ability to just cut through the nonsense and let's see this for what it is. And whether for what it is you're really just whining here and stop, like face it. Or you know what, this is a legitimate thing and we need to help problem solve you to get out of this. I don't sugarcoat things, and I do have compassion, but you don't get to just say it's hard. You have to figure out, why is it hard? Is it hard because you're blocking it and because you're not willing to do the hard thing? Or is it hard because it's not the right path for you? Is it hard because you don't have the skills to do it and you need to invest in yourself professionally or personally? And so I have that great ability, and I've always done it on a personal level. And now it's actually what I'm doing here, except that it's regarding business. But, blocks in business, and when you are not achieving and attaining the sort of success you want, so often it is between your ears. It's not either having the perspective of someone to look outside and from the outside and look at you and share with you their observations, or you have the perspective you've been told over and over again and you refuse to see it. So I'm passionate about that. And I think that's part of what happens here. You know, it's like by sharing what other people do to be successful, and I think hearing my observations and my comments on it during the show, it shows others that, oh, I see myself in that. I'm repeating that same pattern. I didn't notice it. And when someone, I love, it says it in the intro, I love the aha moments. I love when the light bulb goes off. It's like, okay, great, let's move on.
Yeah.
Right?
You know, so I want to do two things. I want to ask one more question, and then I'm going to, because I know I've asked a ton of questions, and I want the audience to understand what I'm doing as I'm doing it. So I'm going to ask one more question, and then I'm going to tie everything together as to why I'm asking these series of questions and what happens as I'm what I call connecting the dots here. But the last question I want to ask is, all right, you've told me why this podcast exists. You've told me, you know, what happened when you realized it became effective. But what's wrong with the other options out there? Why are you, LuAnn, the person that your audience should be listening to, and what's wrong with the other options out there? What makes you different?
Well, first of all, I would never say there's something wrong with other options. I think just like every interior designer attracts their potential ideal client if they are doing the work that you're describing, is getting real and clear about who you are and what you are and how and who you like to work with, right? I think it's the same with this. It's not a matter of the others are not good. It's just if this hits you where it needs to, if you get the message that you need to hear here, and if it happens often enough to keep you coming back. And I just feel like, for me, I'm always interested in going deep enough until I get that. And, you know, I started the podcast thinking it would be a 30-minute podcast, but I found that it pretty much takes people 20 minutes to warm up, you know, before they're really willing to give that deep lesson, that deep, vulnerable aha moment. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? And so I'm asking until I get it. And when I get it, then it's like, okay, thanks so much for your time, right? But until I get it, we're still doing this. And there might be a lesson expressed at the top of the show. So it's not that somebody doesn't come on and tell me or share a success, but until I understand how I could duplicate it from you or understand what I have to pay attention to in order to attempt to duplicate it, I'm not letting you go. And I think that's what people come to count on with the show, is that it's more than saying you should tell your story to your clients. It's let's now teach you how to do it, just like we're doing.
That's amazing. You know, growing up, I'm the last of 10 children. And growing up, I used to watch crime TV dramas with my dad. Because that's what he loved to do. He loved to watch like shows like NYPD Blue and Nash Bridges, right?
Miami Vice.
The things that I loved about those shows is that what you'd get to see is you'd see the crime happen in the beginning of the show, and then over time you'd see the detective try to figure out what was the motive behind this? Who did the crime, and what was the motive behind it? Why did they do it? What I'm doing with you and asking all these questions specifically about the podcast is I'm figuring out the motive, right? I'm thinking about, okay, when LuAnn thinks of time, or when she thinks of relationships, or when she thinks of mentorship, what is going through her mind? Why is she doing this work? It's interesting to me, like you said to me in the very beginning, that Mary Fran, that was the moment. That was the moment where you realize, wait, people are not only just listening to this, but they're getting ready to change their lives and their business, right? And then you told me, and then I found it really, really interesting how you told me that growing up, this is who you were. People came to you for advice. They came to you to figure out their most challenging issues, and you've paid attention to that over time. Now, of course, people that have listened to this podcast know that you have done a lot of deep work and you've worked on your whys, so you know these things. But what's important is to not forget how you were raised or not forget what happened when you were younger, because these things help connect the dots towards the work that you're doing today. As an 8-year-old, I think I might have mentioned this in the podcast previously, as an 8-year-old, I was writing 100-page books. I was writing stories of what I thought my future life would look like. One of the books that I wrote was a book called The Police Life of Jude Charles, right? And I realized the work that I get to do today, why I do road mapping, why I'm able to ask the questions that I'm able to ask and dig deeper and deeper and deeper, is because of the shows that I watched as a young kid, or because of the way that I wrote books as a young kid. I had this imagination and understanding what life could possibly look like. That's the same work that I'm doing with you right now, is I want to connect the dots. I want to understand at a very core level, what is it that makes LuAnn LuAnn? Who is LuAnn? Because when you sit with your client, it's not just about whether or not you can do window treatments or whether or not you can design a nice home. It's about, who's this person that I'm inviting into my house? Because that's a very intimate thing. That's not just, you're not going to let any person come into your house unless you feel like you trust them, right? It's like what people say,
Right.
we do business with people that we know, like, and trust. Well, how do they get to know who you are, right? And like what you have to say and what you stand for. So that's why I'm asking these questions. And I'm not asking it directly in a way that would say, like, okay, well, how were you raised? Or I'm not asking it to say, well, how do you feel about health and relationships, right? I'm asking it just by, okay, you started this business, which I'm specifically talking about the podcast side of the business. You started that, but what led to that journey, right? How do you get there? And so that's why I want to make sure people understand that's what's happening. But I'm also, the most important thing is I'm listening to the stories that you tell. When I say, tell me about the moment when, that moment, that very specific moment when, is the story, right? Stories, now, over the years, stories have become a buzzword, and storytelling and story has become a buzzword, and I want people to understand what story is. Let's take away the framework. Let's take away the structure that I know has been taught in the last couple of years. Let's just focus on what a story actually is. A story is about a very specific moment in time. That moment when, I don't know if it was your assistant, but you mentioned the name, that someone came to you and said, this email just came through, and you guys were jumping up and down, like that's how you felt. That very specific moment opens my eyes to what was happening. It brings me into this moment that you're sitting in front of your computer and reading this email and realizing, wait, this is something bigger, right? And there's a theme there. There's a theme there where it seems like most of your life you've been searching for something bigger. You talked about the 10-year mark, right? You had, the way you put it, you had given up on being amazing, right? Like, and then you talked about that moment where you realized, wait, I'm providing a service to the community. Again, it allowed you to see something bigger than just, we're making money. Making money is great, and it allows you to provide for your family, but it allows you to open the door to something bigger. That's what you're searching for, is something bigger, so that you know you're creating the impact that you want to create in the world.
You're 100% right with that. It's the truth, because I'm not a person that I'm grateful to earn money, but mostly so that I can spend it on other people. I don't collect, cars and clothes and pocketbooks and jewelry. I have like 4 pieces of jewelry that weren't, $30. You know what I'm saying? And it's like, when you said that moment when that client, that customer expressed all of the things that she recognized about Window Works, that was it right there. You just said it was tapping into something bigger. I realized it wasn't just drapes and blinds, that there was a bigger thing happening, and I didn't have the language for it. But you're right. The hindsight observation is, and I've said the hindsight observation is that it was creating something bigger than just putting a window treatment in somebody's house. And, I've said it before. There was a point in that dead period where I felt like, what are we doing? We're selling blinds. Like, this is nuts. And I remember thinking, my obituary, it's going to say, she sold blinds. Like, are you kidding me? And then I remember driving away from that client's home, and I thought, my obituary is going to say she and her husband and her cousin were in business in this town for 70 years. They are a mainstay. Everyone, you probably have a mother, a sister, a brother, a cousin, or a relative that was fortunate enough to do business with them. Like all of a sudden I was writing a completely different obituary. And to your point, the observation now in talking to you is it was tapping into something bigger. It wasn't like, and they made $2 million at the end of it. Like, I care about it because I want to sustain my lifestyle. I want to be able to provide, perks and gifts for my employees and my children and my grandchildren. But it's not the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning.
And it's again, you're bringing so much imagery to it. You mentioned driving home and thinking about your obituary, right? Like I can see that picture sitting in the car thinking to yourself, wait, there's something bigger here. There's something more here, right? But that line that you said, I'm grateful to make money, but it's not just to buy nice things. It's to spend it on other people. It's to invest in a podcast like you're doing now. Like, again, that brings a different kind of audience to this podcast. It's not the person that's looking to make a bunch of money from their interior design company. Is it going to resonate with that, right? They aren't going to resonate with the idea that, wait, the money that I'm making in my business, although I may be selling blinds or I may be, designing a room or whatever it is, like there could be something bigger that even I'm not thinking of right now, right? And that attracts a certain type of person to you that, you know what, I believe in what LuAnn believes, right? Like I believe that what I can do for my family is show them a bigger picture, right? What I can leave behind, the legacy that I can leave behind is something much bigger than just I was an interior designer, right? And so, again, there's three things that I look for in dramatic clarity. There are the stories, the core values, and the philosophies and beliefs. And as I'm listening to you and I'm writing all this down, I'm connecting the dots as to, okay, well, what are her philosophies and beliefs? How does she value her time? How does she look at what it will mean that at the end of it, at the end of her life, what it will mean to be LuAnn Nighera? What would that mean to her, right? Like, again, this is the importance of digging really deep. This is the importance of getting really clear, because what people often think is that, well, no one cares about the personal things that I care about. And it's not true. People want to know who you are as a leader. Even if you're running a team, they want to know who you are as a leader so that they can be attracted to the thing that you do and want to hire you for that thing because they believe more in who you are than just the thing that you can do.
That's true. I've seen that borne out with our business and, of course, with the podcast as well. You're 100% right. It's people want the product and the service, but they want to know that the person, the company, the firm that they're dealing with aligns with something that means something to them, right? And I think really what I'm hearing and your point in, teaching people how to tell their story through video and so forth is because if you don't show your potential consumers who you are, how can they identify and align with that extra that's more than the design that you deliver?
Absolutely. So I produce videos, and I produce documentary series for my clients. And there's this client that I worked with. His name is Stephen Georgi, and he's a copywriter, right? And okay, so you hear that, and you hear Stephen Georgi, copywriter, and it's like, okay, how do you make that interesting? This guy writes words for a living. Like, how do you make that interesting and take some of his core philosophies and core beliefs and core values? How do you make that into something that is interesting? And I'm sure we'll put this in the show notes, but I encourage everyone to watch the video. There's the first 60 seconds of his video where he is sitting on the edge of a couch and he's playing the guitar. And there's this moment where his daughter comes in. And I won't ruin the moment. Again, I want you to watch it because it's magical what happens in the first 60 seconds. But the reason that I put that scene in there with him playing the guitar and what happens with his daughter listening to him play the guitar is because one of his core values that we landed on was empower, right? He's a copywriter who writes words, but he's also helping other copywriters and marketers understand how to use words to sell. And one of his core values is empower. And I go from not just, okay, I'm a guy that believes in empowering other people to showing this very specific moment in time, this story that's happening, that's unfolding, where he has to empower his daughter in that moment. And again, I'm being vague on purpose because I want you to watch it, but
Right,
that's
right,
what we're
right.
looking for when we're thinking about dramatic clarity. I'm searching for the truth. Like, you're going to tell me these are the things that you care about. Like, you care about making sure that the money you're making is to invest in other people, is to empower other people. What is that? Can I see that? Right? What's a story that illustrates that? Don't just tell me your core value is to empower. Anyone can say that. Anyone, like most people like to say our core value is integrity. We believe in doing the right thing. Well, what's a very specific moment in time where you guys had to do the right thing and it cost you money to do the right thing, right? That's
Yep.
more important. That's how you dig for the stories. And again, that's how you understand the way to create the videos that you're creating, because you're not just standing in front of a camera and saying, yeah, we believe in integrity or we believe in doing the right thing for our clients. Well, bring me into that moment. Bring me into the moment where you had to, and it cost you something, whether it cost you time or it cost you money or it cost you anything else. Like, what did it cost you to do that? That's a story I'll believe. That's a story that I'll listen to more than you just saying the words.
It's so true. I mean, it's powerful listening to you describe it because you're right. And this is one of those moments where my 35 plus years of business experience. It's yes, we say at Window Works that integrity is a core value, and I could list you 16 dozen times when I put my money where my mouth is, right? And that's the truth. If a potential client says to me, "What do you do when something goes wrong?" I have very specific answers that include very specific situations where
Let's
we
play
did
that
the
out.
right
Let's play
thing.
that out.
And
When if something goes wrong, because I think that like if we think about the objections that clients will come up with, like that's one of the biggest objections. If I'm going to invite you into my home or into my office, I want to know that I can trust you. So what happens, LuAnn, when something goes wrong? What happens if the thing you had in your mind or the way you set out the plan to do this doesn't go as you planned it to go? What do you do?
well, the simple answer is we take care of it. We don't nickel and dime. We don't putz and play the blame game. We just take care of it. Now, from a complete business standpoint, talking to my designers and window treatment and architects right now, you know, do I just give away the house without any conversation? No. But when my criteria is always if I agree with, okay, so I'm doing a custom window treatment, right? Or a custom awning. If I can look at it and it is everything that we ordered, we agreed, it's this size, it's this style, it's this color, it's all of that, and it's what we said we would do, it is what we did, and the customer looks at me and says, I just don't like it. The first thing is do I agree? Because if I look at it and I say, you're right, that looks like, ugh, it's coming down. It's coming down and I'm paying for it. Because if I thought as a professional that this was the right solution and the reality of it is it's not the right solution, how could I expect a layperson to have known that it wasn't the right solution? Whereas I know many colleagues in my industry would be like, that's what you ordered. I think it looks fine. You see? And I'm just like, no. First criteria is, does it look great? Does it look amazing? And if it doesn't, we're not arguing over this. It's coming down, and I'm going to figure out what's wrong with it so that we don't repeat the mistake. And it's like, maybe we shouldn't have used such a bold fabric. Maybe we shouldn't have made it as long or as tall or as wide, or maybe we shouldn't have done this style. So that's one. The second is, if we're in that same situation and it really does look good objectively, and the client's just like, I just don't like it, well, then we're going to have a conversation, but it's still coming down. And in that case, maybe I might say, often what I will say in that case, when you just honestly don't like it, you look at me and you say, I know it's what I ordered. I know it, I know it looks good. My husband loves it. My daughter loves it. Everybody loves it. I just don't like it. I just don't love it. I don't want to keep it. Then what I might do is I might say, you know what? What would make you happy? How can we change this? Can we alter it? Can we nudge it? Can we zhuzh it? Or do we have to start over again? And whatever that answer is, I will usually at some point tactfully bring up in the process, I'll tell you what, you acknowledge that it's exactly what you ordered. I happen to think it looks looks really beautiful. It's technically appropriate. It's aesthetically appropriate. It's objectively appropriate. You have other people that agree that it's appropriate and beautiful, but subjectively to you, it's not. And that's important. It's your house. So when we make this over again, I'm going to ask you to cover the cost. I'm not going to make profit on it a second time. I made my profit the first time. I don't need to profit on it the second time. So my point is, Jude, that I'm just not going to look, and many colleagues will just railroad no matter what any of the extenuating circumstances are and stick to, it's fine, it looks good, you're crazy, I don't know what your problem is, just pay me. And we don't do that. We just don't do that. There's 1,000 other ways that we exhibit that integrity of telling you that we will always look at this objectively with you, and we will always work with you to come to a solution that you feel good about. And I've been in the situation where I've had a client in the second scenario where they said, you're 100% right. Thanks. I'll be happy to pay cost. I've also had the situation where the customer's like, I don't care. I don't care that everybody likes it. I don't like it. And then I will still pay for it. I will, because I would rather have 100 customers out there that all say, in the end, it was great, than, 90 and 10 that say, yeah, that's great that you like it, but I don't like it, and they didn't do anything about it. It's not worth it. That's what we start calling marketing money. It's like, all right, this one's marketing money. You know what I'm saying? Because that customer will tell everybody the story. And it's going to end one way or another. At the end of the story is, and they walked away, or the end of the story is, and they made it over again for me. Look at it. I love it now. Which end of the story do I want around town?
Yeah. I want the audience to lean in and listen to this, because it's a great lesson about the difference between statements and stories, right? So everything that you said is very important and it's very convincing. But I want to go back. You said we take care of it, right? The core value is integrity. But LuAnn, I want you to tell me one moment when this happened. And the reason why I want the audience to lean in and listen to this is because you gave me a lot of different scenarios, right? A lot of different statements about what you might say, or that you don't want to profit off of it, or that, we don't do it like other people do it. But tell me about a moment bring me into a very specific moment, a very specific client where it not so much as it cost you, but like this moment where you had to show your core value happened, this core value of integrity. I want to know the very specific moment when that happened.
I can think of one for both sides of the story. I can think of many years ago, going back, we work with interior designers all the time at Window Works. And I can think of a specific situation where we did a rather large project for an interior designer, and it was multiple rooms. So it was, the whole house at one time, draperies, blinds, shades, everything. And like many design projects, we are, possibly doing our first site visit with the designer and their team in, say, September. We're not getting purchase orders until January, and we're not installing until May. And I take really good notes. I have to. I'm not a person that attention to detail is my strong suit. And so in Window Works all these years, I've worked against my innate nature of being loosey-goosey with details. And so I've had to develop processes and mechanisms to overcome that. And one of those processes and mechanisms is that I take ridiculously articulated notes. And the other part of it is, in this particular situation I'm thinking about, the initial measure was in the late summer, but there were 2 and 3 measures before we finally get the purchase orders that winter. And one of my mechanisms is I'm sitting here with, sheets of paper that have 30, 40 different measurements on it for different rooms, different products, all the details. And each time we would go back to, we're just going to, tweak this one room. Well, we review all the rooms. And now all of a sudden we're essentially tweaking, probably 50% of the rooms. But one of my mechanisms is each time I make a change to the original measurements, I am writing, each visit is in a different color pen. So if all my notes the first visit were in black, all my notes the second visit are in blue, all my notes in the third visit are in green, whatever it is, and they're dated. And I note who's there with me making these decisions. And so when we come to that installation in May, I know exactly what I'm doing. I know exactly what we decided. I know exactly the changes. And there was a situation, there was many situations, but the one I'm thinking of, we get, my partner Bill gets to the install, and literally it was like dominoes falling. First phone call. Hey, in the dining room, they're saying that the drapes are supposed to be under the crown molding, but these are above the window molding. And I'm like, what? No. And I pull out my notes. I'm like, oh, on this date they were, but then on this date we changed it. The purchase order has it. Okay. Okay. An hour later, another phone call. Hey, we're here in the such and such room, and they're saying the Roman shades are supposed to be outside mounted. They're all inside mounted. And I'm like, whoa. Jude, this was like this spiraling day. And ba-boom, ba-boom, ba-boom. And after like a 10-room install this day with 40, 50 windows, literally 4 of the rooms were supposedly not done right. But literally, I had the backup for every single change. And my final PO actually described it all in words. And ultimately, I'm having the conversation with the design firm, and they're just like, so what? Like, so what? And I'm like, okay, so what? And, I just looked at Vinny and Billy and I said, we're going to remake all this at our cost. And we're not sending an invoice? No. Why not? Because we're not. Because ultimately, this designer, this firm is important to us. And I will figure out a way the next time that takes this one step further for mutual accountability. But for this time, all of these notes are only on my side. And I have them, but they're only on my side. And so now the next time it was, why don't we send the recap email after every visit? Because what I always say, Jude, is you can roll anything back to how you could have changed the outcome. And so you would think that me having 6 months worth of notes meticulously documented in the right color, in different colors with dates would be enough. But guess what? It wasn't. And I wasn't willing to sit there and say to a valued partner, so what? You're eating tens of thousands of dollars worth of drapes. I ate them. We redid them. But now I said, okay, and now we do the recap email after every meeting. And before we go to production, we review this. And so, because that was one place where I could say, yes, I could say, how could this have been avoided? The design firm could have taken responsibility for reading the POs and going through the details on their own. Or if that's not happening, because I can't change you, I can only change my reaction to you. What can I do? So I was like, okay, I can recap it in real time, not 6 months later after the visit, and before going to production. I can insist, I don't care how busy you are, I can insist that we review this in real time one more time. Awesome. And that's what we did.
Awesome. That changes everything, though. Like, again, this is why I wanted to go back and do it, because I want interior designers, architects, people that do window treatment, I want them to really listen in on the two differences of what just happened. The first time you told me we take care of it, and you told me what would happen, a lot of hypotheticals. But the second time, you brought me into this very specific moment, and I want to break down why it was so valuable to get into this very specific moment. Because again, the first time you told me hypotheticals and you told me what could possibly happen, but the second time you opened with something that I found was extremely valuable, and I wasn't sure where you were going with it at first. But then it was such a light bulb moment when I realized, oh, wow, like I want LuAnn to do work for me. So what it was you said you take really good notes, although it's not your strong suit. You mentioned
I hate it.
But it's beautiful because you mentioned a weakness, you mentioned a vulnerability, and you mentioned all the things that this is a weakness, but you put all these things into place to make sure that, hey, even if it's a weakness, I'm not going to let that stop me from doing a great job. right? You mentioned how
Mm.
you had black, blue, and green pen, right? Or how you go back to your notes even when you get a call that something isn't right. You go back to those notes because you're relying on these notes. You're relying on getting this right, right? And doing a good job. But then, so that's the way I realized, oh my gosh, this is beautiful. It's magical. But then the way you ended this story by talking about, you know what, we're going to eat this cost because this client, this firm that we're working with is important to us. We're going to eat the cost, and then I'm going to get it right
Mm-hmm.
the next time. So what it shows me from beginning to end, this one specific moment, this one scenario, what it shows me is that LuAnn is going to do whatever it takes to get it right. Even if it's not right the first time, she's going to make sure this doesn't happen again, right? But she does that by making sure to put these things into place. There's a system, there's a process that makes sure it's like it's almost like dummy proof, right? Like even if LuAnn had to hand this off to someone else, you got to follow the same process. Take really good notes, black, blue, and green pen. You're going back 3 or 4 times. You know that it's between September to May. You want to make sure all the notes are correct and they're organized. Like that's the kind of person I want to work with. That's the kind of person I know that I don't even have to call and check up on LuAnn to make sure everything's going right. She's got it under control. And so again, that's because you brought me into a very specific moment in time versus telling me all the things that you would do. Because telling me all the things that you would do sounds great, but this very specific moment in time, you pulled the curtain back a little bit because you were vulnerable and saying, you know what, I had to realize this is not my strong suit, but I put this in place so that you as a client don't have to worry about that. Again, that I love that that actually happened. This wasn't planned, but it shows it shows the power and the value of storytelling versus just making statements. When what happens is, as a client, as someone that's sitting across the room from you, I can come to those conclusions on my own, which is so much more powerful. If I can come to the conclusions on my own when you're telling me a story, that's so much more powerful than you're just telling me statements. Because I'm still a little skeptical if you're telling me these statements. But if I
Mm.
come to the conclusion on my
Mm-hmm.
own that, oh, I value that, I can see, I've had it happen before where someone didn't get the notes right or someone didn't take notes at all. And now we are 6 months later and we're still scrambling to figure out what's happening here. There's this point of frustration, this thing that that gets embedded into your mind when that happens the first time, right? And so when you see someone goes above and beyond the way that you're going above and beyond, that matters so much more than you just telling me you'll get it right the first time. So anyway, that's the point of dramatic clarity. That's the point of digging deep into these stories and listening to that, because again, it brings me into a very specific moment, which leads into what we're getting ready to talk about next, dramatic demonstration, where you can show this very specific moment. Like I can see the black, blue, and green pens. I can see you taking notes. I can see the phone call coming in, and you're like, nope, let me go back to my notes. Let me make sure this is right.
With the terror in my face and my
Exactly.
heart.
Exactly. So even if you,
I mean, I remember that day. I don't know how many dozen years ago it is. I was just like, ah, like, and like I said, it was like dominoes. It was like, wait, Billy called again.
right. But you can recreate those moments, right? That's the power of, again,
Yeah.
not just storytelling, but now we're going into part two, which is video storytelling. That is the power of going into a very specific moment in time that even if you needed to recreate it, you're able to recreate it with this imagery in your mind that you're bringing this to life for the other person.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I think it's, your process is so great. I mean, any one of us can go back and listen to the episode and just sort of take the questions that you put to me and just put them to yourself, right? And sit with it and really answer them for yourself. And to your point, look and see what is the thread that you're finding through all of the answers that you gave. Because even for you, when you talk about the police life of
Yeah.
Jude Charles, right? Like, you're so clear is the Law
Yeah.
and Order
Yeah.
shows, right? Because they literally bum bump, and there's the
Right.
dead
Right.
body, bum
Right.
bump, right? And then the whole show is going backwards to figure out, like you said, the motivations and all of the circumstances that brought those people in that episode to that spot. And that's what you just did with me. It's like taking me all the way back peeling it all apart and figuring out what are all the different components, motivations, experiences that bring me to this part in my life. And so for our colleagues listening, they need to do that exploration. They need to do that for themselves as well, because it's so important to express the stories of your philosophy, to your point, on what do you bring to business? Because I say all the time, it's not your product. That's the commodity. You got to bring you. You got to bring differences. You have to, why should somebody get a sofa from you? Why should somebody get a floor plan from you? And there is an answer to that, right,
absolutely.
Jude?
There is an answer, and it's what makes you unique. It's what makes you different. Like, to me, again, listening to that story, it's like I'd want to start off with black, blue, and green pen. That's what makes me different, is that understanding what it is that I need to do for you as a client is the black, blue, and green pen. And then going into that story of the moment it happened, right? Why you were using this black, blue, and green pen. That's what makes you unique. That's what makes you different. And it's like, immediately you don't start with, hey, I can do this great job for you, which everyone is going to start with that. Everyone is going to talk about how great they are. Everyone.
Right.
But what can you talk about that makes you different, that connects you with this person, the client that you're sitting across from? What is it that can make you stand out? And that's what this is all about.
See, that's that magic right there. That's your superpower, because I was understanding. I was understanding and getting the reason and the motivation for finding the story and not just the statement. But when you say, if you were then going to start to make a video for WindowWorks, you're going to open it up and the screen's going to have a black, blue, and a green pen, right? On the camera,
yeah.
right? Oh my God, that's genius. I love that.
You know, LuAnn, that leads us into part 2, which is about dramatic demonstration. But I know that's going to take another episode for us to dive deeper. So yeah, let's. I'm really looking forward to just coming back on the show to talk about that.
Me too, because you've got me so intrigued with this. I just, to me, just the high five observation, like this, like of you know, you hear that story and you immediately, as a, accomplished videographer, video storyteller, I mean to say, you knew that opening scene. And so now I'm super intrigued about the way you take us into that part 2, which is, as you said, dramatic demonstration. And of course, you have to come back, because now you've got me hooked and I want to hear how we do that more. So thank you for all of this today. This was so much fun being the guinea pig, I have to say.
No, it was a lot of fun, because again, I think the thing that holds people up in creating great stories, or creating great video stories specifically, is just understanding how to craft the story, right? Like, you got to know what a story is, and that's what we spend a lot of time on. What is actually a story? And making sure you're not just telling people statements, but you're telling them stories. That's what connects. And so yeah, it was a lot of fun. I knew you didn't know where I would go with it, but no. I think we landed on something that's really amazing that your audience can listen to over and over and understand how to create this for themselves.
I agree. It's so good. Your questions were so good, and they really made me think. So here's the thing. We are going to do a part 2 where we're going to pick apart this dramatic demonstration. We're also going to have a part 3 where it's dramatic leverage, where I'm assuming once we've uncovered our stories, our really powerful, important stories that relate to people, and then we figure out how we demonstrate them, then it's moving it in and how we use it in our marketing and how we leverage it. So looking forward to those conversations with you, Jude. In the meantime, you have a book coming out next year in 2021, and it is called Dramatic Clarity. I believe you said that's the working title of it, right? Because we're sort of early, right?
Yes, Dramatic Demonstration is the title of it. And what I want to do for the first time, and it's the only audience I'm going to do this with, I want to give away the book. So any person that reaches out to me, LuAnn will put it in the show notes, the actual link to reach out to me. But if you reach out to me, I will give you early access to the book, because in the book, I walk you through these same 3 phases: dramatic clarity, dramatic demonstration, and dramatic leverage. But there are tons of questions, the same kind of questions that I asked LuAnn now on the podcast. There's a whole lot more that I ask within the book so that you can work through it on your own, and you can understand how to craft these stories in a very magical way that helps people connect with you on such a deeper level. So again, reach out to me. And this is I'm not just saying it, this is literally the only podcast I'm doing this for.
Wow.
because the audience has been very receptive to it, and I want to be able to give back, and not just we're here talking about it, but I want to give you something tangible that you can take away and continue to create this for yourself.
That's amazing, and I'm so grateful to you. Thank you, because I do know that look, as an author and as somebody who's marketing their products and their services, you really could and should offer it to every audience that you go and visit. But thank you so much. That means so much to me, and I know that it will mean so much to them. And of course, we understand there's many people that do need to and prefer to sit and go through these things by ourselves. And then you have the people like me, like, can I just hire you to do it, please?
Yeah.
So it's always, I love it when a guest provides both sides, the way for my audience to do it for themselves, if that's their nature or where their budget is at this point in their business, and also obviously available to just hire. So thank you, Jude, so much for coming on today. We'll put that link in the show notes today. We'll put it in the Instagram post for this show today on how you can reach out and be one of the lucky people that gets the advanced digital version of Jude's book.
Awesome.
That was pretty fun, wasn't it? I mean, crazy, right? Jude really has a way of getting to the core of our why by asking and asking until he's found that golden nugget he's looking for. And he didn't do it in a hard, investigative reporter sort of way. It's just within the scope of seemingly normal conversation that he gets you to talk and to reveal things that you never realized were important. And I would say also, not just to talk, but to think. That's what he got me doing, okay? And Jude has a very good sense of how to sift through the clutter of all the things that we say and zero in on that something that is, in fact, exceptional about each one of us. We're so used to ourselves, aren't we? What's unique about me? Nothing much, right? I get up, I go to work, I eat dinner, maybe I have a good or a bad day, a good or a bad client. How many times have somebody said to me, "What's my Fred Burns only?" I don't know how to figure it out, right? So I know that we do think this. We think there's nothing special or unique, but it is crazy to even entertain that thought. Right? We are each a unique, not only are we unique human persons, right, put on the planet, but we're a unique set of circumstances and experiences. And every one of us has a story to tell. And sometimes it takes someone else asking the questions to get us to realize that there really is something in there that's special, that sets us apart as a business person, and that could be the thing that we are leaning into to attract our ideal clients, right? So why do this exercise? Because in the end, like Jude said, clients care more about who we are than what we do or we sell. That is the simple reason. I've said it 1,000 times. We don't sell product. We sell ourselves. We sell people at WindowWorks, okay? It's not the commodity of the blind, okay? And through experiencing this and through this exploration, we learn that we can find and attract the kind of client who admires and respects us for who we are and how we translate into our businesses, right? So before I go on, I want to take a moment to thank Kravit for helping make this show a reality. At WindowWorks, we've done business with Kravit from the very beginning. Kravit is a fifth-generation family business that distributes top-quality furniture, wall coverings, trimmings, carpets, and accessories. To view their entire collection and open up a trade account, go to Kravit.com. Kravt.com. And with your code AWDB10, you can get 10% off any one purchase of Kravit fabric wallpaper or trim. And I don't know if you're listening to this in real time on Christmas Day 2020, but if you are listening to it during the holiday season, I just want to do a huge extra special thank you to Kravit for being with us since the very beginning. And I would love for each of you, if you're inclined, to also reach out to Kravit and just thank them. Their beginning belief and continued support of the podcast is so critical to everything that's happened here. So if you've gotten some value from it, I would sure love it if you'd share some thanks with them at this holiday time. All right, now, How does Jude do it, right? He calls what we were working through in this conversation today the first phase of a road mapping session, okay? He calls it dramatic clarity. And I would say we achieved some dramatic clarity, right? Now, you'll notice that Jude's questions focused on me, who I was, not what my business does. He asked emotional-based questions, and he didn't let me tell him my typical answers for what I stood for and for the core values of our business, right? He pushed me to go deeper than that. Give me an example, he said. Tell me about that exact moment, when you were in that moment. What did you do? Why did you feel like that? He essentially makes you relive the moment so that he can capture the aha and create something impactful for our brand from that very quick and often overlooked moment of truth. Okay? I never really thought much about how being my family's and my friends' extended circle go-to girl for assessing, I should say, and clearing mental roadblocks had much to do with the podcast, right? I didn't necessarily make that connection, but I think that's the whole point. We overlook our natural talents and what makes us unique because sometimes it's just easy for us. And, you know, when I think back, that is the kind of secret sauce, right? And the other thing is that we can overcomplicate things. So don't think to do this deep work, to discover our real why, your real motivation has to be overly complicated. Jude shows us that it's way down under the surface that we can find the exceptional moments, the moments that define us. But through his prompts and his questions, it wasn't that hard to get there, right? And his genius is not only extracting these moments from us, but also stringing the moments together, connecting the dots to create something that we can use to explain our brand, to show who we are, and essentially convince our potential clients that, yes, we align. You and I, we think alike. What I stand for is what you stand for. And that encourages the people who we want to work with us, right? And that is the thing. We're not actually convincing them. We're showing them. We're sharing our story. And they're coming to the decision to work with us on their own. All right. So now you heard that Jude is coming back to the show to work through the next steps in which he creates a brand story with video. And until then, he's offering us early access to his book, Dramatic Demonstration, so you can learn more about his process and try it yourself. To get your free digital copy of his book, go to http://judecharles.co/DDP book 3. Okay, this will be in the show notes. I'm not going to repeat that. Okay, just if you're listening on your phone, the app will be right there. Just click on it. You can go to it and sign up for your digital version. All right. Okay, and don't forget that he welcomed us to take a look at that final video he created for Stephen Georgia, the copywriter. Okay, so you can go see that video on Jude's website at judecharles.co. All right. So judecharles.co. And also, I hope that you're subscribing to Window Fashion Vision magazine. I know that this is, primarily directed at the window treatment industry. However, more and more interior designers are involved in the magazine and sharing their projects and their expertise. And I suggested to Sophia, the editor of Window Fashion Vision magazine, that Jude might be somebody to bring some value there. So hopefully you're subscribed. If you're not, go to subnow.com/LuAnn, subnow.com/LuAnn, and you can get your subscription. And in the coming months, Jude will be contributing some articles there, because I have to say, this was very interesting going through this process with Jude. And I've learned a lot in these last 2 episodes speaking with him. And that is why I've invited him to come back again. And to me, any which way you can keep getting this information, that's where you're going to keep stringing together your aha moments so that you can focus on the things that make you unique. All right. All righty. So just a reminder, LuAnn Live is open for registration, okay? I'm trying to create that little story for you so you can visualize what it's going to be like. Please go to LuAnnLive.com. Join us. We are in early bird registration until December 31st, okay? And keep in mind, with early bird registration, you not only save $100 off of each ticket, but you are going to get 3 Zoom accountability sessions with me and all of your early bird colleagues, okay? So if that's 20 of you or 100 of you, however many people sign up for early bird, we are going to get together 2 weeks after the event for an hour, 2 more weeks after that, and 2 more weeks after that, because it is about taking the ideas, the inspiration, and turning it into action. And sometimes to turn it into action, we need either some accountability or we have some questions on the follow-up on how to do it. And so for both of these reasons, I want to have these Zoom meetings with you. And the other thing I'm going to say that I think is really super valuable about doing this as a group is that if someone asks a question, it might not be a question you ever thought to ask. But then all of a sudden your brain goes, whoa, I could use that. Or when someone shares an accountability step that they've taken, that may inspire you to do it as well. So there is power in the group, right? I'm always about all of us being together. So please join me at LuAnn Live first for the 2.5-day amazing event. We are going to have so much fun. I can't tell you. I've been saying it over and over again. I miss you like crazy. And so, yes, it's eyeball to eyeball. It's me and you talking, laughing, dancing, interacting, all the crazy shenanigans that we did the first time, except that you're in one spot and I'm in another. But beyond that, it's going to be very similar as I can make it. All right. So LuAnnLive.com. Please sign up for early bird, save yourself the money, get in on those Zoom sessions. All right, guys. Happy holiday. Whatever, you celebrate, however you celebrate it. We're almost done 2020. It's almost over. I can't say it's all been bad. There's been a lot of lessons, like every challenge that we face in our businesses, in our personal lives, in everything we do. The magic does come in the lessons. And so if you've had a challenging year, in any way, shape, or form, sit and reflect on it, figure it out. What could you have done to change something? And if there was nothing that you could have done to change it, then there's always something that you could have done to change your reaction to something, the way you process it, the way you thought about it, and look for that lesson in it, whatever it is, because I know for me personally, that's what makes everything manageable, doable. It's what makes everything hopeful. Okay, so take a moment with yourself, take a moment with your team, take a moment with your family and reflect, all right? Have a happy, safe holiday season. We do have more shows next week. I'm talking to you like I'm going away for a million years. I'm not going anywhere. I'm just getting a little drippy on you, okay? All right. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Decide to be excellent. Thank you so much for joining me again today. This podcast is a production of WindowWorks, your resource for custom window treatments and awnings. To learn how we can help you on your next interior design project, go to www.windowworks-nj.com. And if you're interested in working with me on your business, either through masterminds or one-on-one coaching, or you want to know how to get my book, The Making of a Well-Designed Business, or you just want to know what's going on in the podcast land and where I'm going to be, all of that is found at LuAnnNigara.com. Thank you so much. Have an excellent day.